Dear trading friends, today we're going to talk about Ethereum and an Ethereum whale who has an incredibly large trading position open. First, I want to give a quick shout out to Smart Money Crypto from X who shared this information. That's how I found out about it and ended up looking at Hyperliquid and also on Hyperscan where I came across these positions. And as you can see here, he has $609 million in an Ethereum position, which is 203,340 Ethereum. With a current open loss of 30 million. Just imagine that. The funding fees are also insanely high, at $1.8 million. In addition, he also has an open Bitcoin long position with an entry price of 91,506 and a Solana position with an entry price of $135. These are also already very large. We're talking about 88 million and 37 million US dollars. And if we look at this on Hyperdash, we can currently see his total open loss. And we're talking about 35 million, almost 36 million US dollars that are in open loss here. And the Ethereum position, that's 609 million. Just imagine that. And if you remember my live streams, if you remember the videos where I talked specifically about this one whale who has an open position here on Hyperliquid, it's currently at 2,124. And now I'm going to zoom in again on that corner. There it says the same thing with the 203,340 Ethereum that are in a 5 times position here. So this is exactly the whale I talked about before, but whose account I couldn't find at the time. So Smart Money Crypto, thank you for sharing this. Then of course, that's super exciting. What else is interesting here? And why have I now also, as I mentioned, placed a long order down there? So I have 10 Ethereum in long orders here. We have this large liquidation right in this price range. It even goes a bit lower, down to about 2,000 US dollars. We're talking about around 100 billion, but you only see that if you use Model 3 on CoinGlass. For that, you just need to sign up, no paid subscription or anything like that. Really just an email address and password. And then with Model 3, you get access to exactly this data where you have even deeper insights. And not so long ago, I didn't believe in this price yet. I have to be completely honest with you. I said, okay, from a bear market perspective, that would actually already be active. By now, we've fallen so far that it's really not that far off anymore. We're talking about around 900 US dollars here, which means it would still have to drop by about 30%. So that we reach this liquidation. And now a question for you. If you yourselves are market makers or institutional investors, and we look at what liquidations are generally visible, let's take Hyperliquid as an example. We have a bit lying around at 3,800 to 3,700 US dollars. But is it interesting to enter now and pick this up here? Or is it more interesting, especially for a big whale who has around 200 million, a bit more in equity here? And all of that with 5 times leverage, which is why he has such large positions. And isn't it interesting to try to liquidate him here? The question is, what does he do if we keep going down? Does he add more to his position so that his liquidation price drops further? Or would he say he'll just let himself get liquidated? Best case scenario, that would really be the best case. So we could say, okay, we don't go down that far, but instead we get a recovery beforehand. Maybe to 3,400, maybe even to 3,700. I'll show you in a moment what else is interesting here. We have a massive fair value gap here, and we also have an order block here. I still see the fair value gap as particularly interesting because it hasn't been closed yet. I can also show it to you visually, right in this area, exactly here. That doesn't mean we have to reach it, but experience has shown us that such price levels are very often revisited. And that would be around the 3,750 US dollars, which is exactly where this liquidation cluster is as well. But here we're only talking about a yearly chart for Ethereum in Model 3. We also have a lot of liquidity sitting at $2,500, and it gets very interesting down to $2,300. We shouldn't forget that either. If I switch to a 6-month view here, we'll see that in more detail as well. You can see that a lot has built up there. And I really don't know whether this will be left untouched or if we'll rise first and then come back to pick it up, because there are also an incredible number of billions lying here again. We mustn't forget that. These liquidations have already been open since the 7th month of 2025. And now they've accumulated massively once again, which means I could imagine that we'll go further down here, even though I don't want to see it happen. I would much rather see higher prices. And now the question is, after this long period of consolidation we've had, will we rise and collect liquidity above us, or will we continue to fall? Because let's not forget, there are also plenty of billions lying above us. Exactly the price I mentioned earlier, around the 3,700 US dollars. There are also billions in liquidations in short Ethereum positions at that level. We really must not forget that. Accordingly, Ethereum is currently very interesting to me because of its higher liquidation volume, which isn't even close to as large for Bitcoin. And if we look at it now, as I said on the yearly chart, we have this large liquidation at around 2,100. We have this big hyper liquidation whale that I showed you here with its large lost positions. And maybe the institutions are saying, hey, we don't care about that. It has to go. We need to push the price down no matter what. Maybe some kind of world news will come out that pushes us down again. And at the same time, we also have to take this into account. If I take this out here now and we include a Fibonacci strategy, which works so well. You know, I went long here. I did set a stop loss here, but I went long again here. In this case, I've already taken partial profits twice. Once here and once here. Currently, the stop loss is set to break even, but for a complete correction level, because we have, don't forget this, I told you we reached a target level here if we set it precisely. We triggered it several times, which means for the long traders who were in here, the sell-off started here. I also sold Ethereum spot here. We also went short on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And how could things continue from here? Exactly by saying we have a complete correction level, maybe down to the 0.786 Fibonacci level. And where is that? At 2158. And where is the trader's liquidation for that? $2,123. So we have some overlaps here that we shouldn't ignore. And we must not forget, after massive increases, when we go up here from the bear market low to the last high, where did Ethereum settle down before the next rally? Take a look at this. Again at the 0.786 level, right here within it. That was where our correction level ended before we had the massive surge. And in the last bull market, even if we include this here, it was exactly the same scenario. I'll remove this again now. We found the bottom at the 0.786 level. Could it actually be the case again now that we say this bearish structure, which is actually still much more intact with Ethereum than with Bitcoin, means that we might see these lower prices again? And that's why I also decided to take a long position here. What do you see here? Currently, it's 10 Ethereum at 2,124 and 2020 US dollars. But if we go further in now, that's not all yet. That doesn't mean we'll immediately go down here and trigger the liquidation now, because before that, we still have several key levels that will, of course, become very interesting before we even head down toward the low. And here we're talking especially about this volume key level that we have here. We've already dipped into it once, but there's still quite a bit of volume left here. We'll see it in a moment on the VPVR. This exact area I'm talking about with this large volume block is super interesting here. And this will also be interesting because if we go in and look at the large orders and whale trades, if you don't know what all that is, feel free to check out my channel. I'd really appreciate a subscription, a like on this video, and a comment here. But in the Learn Trading playlist, step by step to becoming a profitable trader, you'll find the third video there. With this tool, you're ahead of 99% of traders. It's used by institutional users, and in fact, institutions really do use it. Specifically level 2 data, including liquidations, of course, but what's really interesting is where have other people positioned themselves, or where do we as retail traders now also have free access? We now have insight into these order books, so we can see visually where the big players have positioned themselves. Because our first support zone, which has formed over the weekend, is in the range of $2,950 to $2,922. At the current time, only on Binance. Here, only Binance is being filtered out, with $125 million on a long position. That means the first possible support we could have is right here. If we go in, maybe now again with Model 3, but look at what has happened in the last 48 hours. Are there perhaps also liquidations in that area? Exactly where I just said, where these people have positioned themselves. A price range from 2,960 to 2,948. That's the last 48 hours. Let's look at the last 24 hours. Is this cluster here perhaps so large that you could say it might become interesting? And yes, that's exactly it. We're now in the next liquidation and would then go down here. Roughly, that would be enough, down to 2,943 US dollars. That means right here, where this cluster is, where the whales have positioned themselves with their long orders, they're probably waiting to liquidate the retailers here in order to fill their long orders. And don't forget, we've already had exactly the same game before. Let me scroll back a bit here. That was this order block here. We dipped in even further. I told you I had placed long orders exactly in this price range here, and I shared that as well. Also on Telegram, when I took my profits, once here and once here again, roughly taking profits. And after that, I moved the stop loss to break even, and then the position was triggered out at break even. But just so we see that exactly these kinds of clusters can serve as potentially valid zones for a small reversal, that doesn't mean we only go long then. Don't forget, we also have them above us. Again and again, these large clusters. Here too, we have a lot of sell orders, as you can see here. But the next area, which will be super interesting, 2,750 to 2,700 USDT. Here as well, there are quite a few orders in that range. Let's take a look at how large these orders are here, which could be our next support zone. At the current moment, 73 million. So, not as strong as we've seen before, but we shouldn't overlook the fact that a lot more could be placed here. We said 2,750 to 2,700. Where would that be? That actually puts us roughly at the 0.618 Fibonacci level and a bit below it. That would be exactly this cluster. Let me draw that in again. Exactly this low that we have here. So right in here, so we can pull out this last wick again. And this could also be a possible long position here. So if we really dip further down, that's where the first orders would come in. Super interesting for me. And furthermore, let's look further down. Take a look at the cluster I mentioned earlier in the yearly liquidation. By now there are already some here as well. An incredible number of people have already placed themselves here, and there will definitely be more in the future. We can also take another look here. How big is this cluster of long orders down here? Then we'll mark it and see what's in there at this point in time. Right now, there are about 125 million here, plus 20 million in spot. So super interesting. Also another 2.4 million in spot at Coinbase. So I think this could really become a good support zone here, and you can see this compared to the short areas, there is a lot of defense on the long side here, and a strong effort to push the price back up, even if it might only be temporary. Accordingly, I will of course continue to watch this whale to see if he keeps adding to his position, because according to Smart Money Crypto, he has increased his position since it was smaller before. Now it's at 694 million US dollars, which is quite large. And if we really move into these price ranges, then for me it's also time again to open a larger grid long trading bot here, because then I have less price range below me. And that's going to be very exciting, because then I'll open a coin margin long Ethereum bot again, not just here of course, but also a bit earlier. But you'll get notified in my videos anyway when I do that. So I see that as an opportunity. As a grid range, even further down, my grid range goes down to about 1,000 US dollars. If we fall lower, I'll set up another bot even further down, but that's how it will look. That way, if we consolidate here maybe, or if there's really a reversal here, then I'll also have a grid bot open. Because it's a coin margined bot where I use Ethereum, it increases my Ethereum holdings on the way up, so I can sell them for profit at the top. So please leave a like. That's it for today's video. I think it's exciting to watch this whale here, and we'll see each other next time. Ciao, ciao.